Okay, Senator, so this is your fourth trip to Iowa in a little over 7 months. I doubt you're coming here for the weather. Some people might think maybe you're lining up for maybe running for higher office.
Well, I'm thrilled to be back in Iowa. I've really enjoyed getting to meet and visit with so many Iowans. And there's no doubt that Iowa is the center of a national debate about the direction our country should go and the direction the Republican Party should go. And I certainly want to participate in that debate and urge that to turn the country around. We've got to get back to the founding principles that made us strong. We've got to get back to free market principles that produce economic growth, that make it possible for people to achieve the American dream. And we've got to get back to our constitutional liberties. And there's no better place to participate in that debate than here in Iowa.
Have you set a timeline on when you might make a decision on whether or not you're going to run for president in 2016?
Well, I tell you, my focus is really on engaging in the national debate and on mobilizing and energizing the grassroots. In my view, where we are right now, it is very much like the late 1970s. Late 1970s, you had Jimmy Carter in the White House. You had the same failed economic policies producing the same economic stagnation and misery. You had the same feckless foreign policy making the world a much more dangerous place. And we saw all over the country a grassroots movement that became the Reagan Revolution. Millions of men and women who said, we can't keep going down this road. It didn't come from Washington. Washington despised Ronald Reagan. It came from the American people. What I am so encouraged, so hopeful and optimistic about is the same thing is happening. Everywhere I travel, I see that same passion. And so what I'm trying to do is encourage and energize and mobilize the grassroots, because the only way we will pull back from this fiscal and economic cliff is if the American people rise up and say, we want to get back to morning in America.
You mentioned the foreign policy. The things going on with Russia and Ukraine are very unsettling for a lot of people. If you were in the White House, how would you handle this situation?
Well, I think we're seeing Putin's aggression and act of war is a direct consequence of an absence of U.S. leadership. For 5 years, America has receded from the world stage, and when America doesn't lead, it creates a vacuum. And into that vacuum steps nations like Russia and Iran and China. In my view, we should be standing unequivocally for freedom, a clarion voice for freedom. Now, no one wants to see military conflict with Russia. But there is a great deal we can do that doesn't involve military conflict. Number one, what we ought to be doing right now is immediately installing the anti-ballistic missile batteries in Eastern Europe. They were scheduled to go in, and President Obama canceled them in an effort to appease Putin and Russia. That appeasement has obviously failed, and we ought to stand with our allies in Eastern Europe and help provide them the tools to defend their freedom. But secondly, we ought to be standing unequivocally with the people of Ukraine who want to be free, who want to be with the West, who want to be with us. And we should immediately sign a free trade agreement with Ukraine so they can sell their goods here, we can sell our goods there. And number two, we should help them prepare the infrastructure so they can import liquid natural gas. The most effective economic blackmail that Russia uses over Ukraine and much of Europe is natural gas. And we're blessed in America with an abundance of natural gas. Right now, there are dozens of applications pending in the Obama administration to export liquid natural gas that haven't been approved. We need to improve them immediately. And doing that would do three things. Number one, it would help free the people of Ukraine from economic blackmail by giving them an alternative source of energy. Number two, it would weaken Putin and Russia because they rely on that income and revenue stream. It would provide instead competition to weaken that revenue stream. But number three, it would generate jobs and economic growth back here in America. It is a win-win, but President Obama is standing in the way because, unfortunately, he's standing in the way of developing our energy resources, and he's standing in the way of American leadership in foreign policy.
So sending Hillary Clinton over there with a reset button probably wouldn't be on your agenda.
That moment encapsulated at the beginning, and I would note they misspelled the word reset.
Right.
But it encapsulated everything that has been wrong with the Obama, Clinton, Kerry foreign policy, and it's all a continuing misunderstanding. It is a belief, number one, that the world is a better place when America recedes from leadership. It is a belief, number two, that bullies and tyrants respond to weakness and appeasement. And it is a belief, number three, that we don't have to stand with our allies. The pattern of the Obama-Clinton-Kerry foreign policy has been abandoning our friends and allies and appeasing those who would do us harm. And we've seen that across the globe. I'll tell you, no place is more dangerous than what the Obama administration is doing right now with the nation of Iran. I agree with Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, that this Geneva deal is a very, very bad deal. It is an historic mistake. And I fear we're repeating the same mistakes of the Clinton administration in the 1990s, where with North Korea, they relaxed the sanctions in North Korea in exchange for the same amorphous promises. In fact, this deal is being negotiated by this very same person who negotiated the North Korea deal that failed. And what happened in North Korea? Billions of dollars flowed into North Korea as a result of the sanctions being lifted. They used that money to develop nuclear weapons. I think we're committing the same mistake with Iran, but it's much, much more dangerous because with Iran, you have a nation whose leaders are embracing a radical extremist religious view that celebrates suicide. The risk is unacceptably high. If they acquire nuclear weapons, they'll use them, and the Obama administration, sadly, is facilitating that happening.
Here closer to home, you have occasionally been a little critical of some of your Republican colleagues in the Senate. Some critics of you say, you know, this is a big midterm election year. We should all be united as Republicans. How do you respond to that?
Well, listen, I agree we should unite. And, you know, there's a real difference of opinion in Washington as to how you win elections. Many Washington consultants say there's a choice to be made. You either stand for principle or you win elections. I think that's a false dichotomy. You know, if you look at the last four congressional cycles, 2006, 2008, 2010, 2012, three of the four, 06, 08, and 12, we followed the Washington strategy. Stick your head down, don't rock the boat, don't stand for much of anything. And we got clobbered.
Yep.
It is a losing strategy. The only good congressional election of the last four was 2010. What did we do in 2010? We drew a line in the sand. We said we are running to repeal every word of Obamacare, to stop the out-of-control spending, to stop the debt, to get back to our Constitution, and we won an historic tidal wave of an election. And yet what happens now? We see the Washington consultants saying, well, let's go back and do what we did in 06, 08, and 12. It makes no sense. I want for Republicans to win elections. We have to win in 2014 and 2016 if we're going to pull the country back from the cliff. But the only way we win is if Republicans stand for principle, stand with the American people. And that's what I'm encouraging and trying to encourage every Republican to do.
You've been closely aligned with Senator Rand Paul, but here in the past few weeks, you guys have taken a few jabs at each other as well. What's the relationship like with Senator Paul?
Oh, Rand and I are good friends. We have worked side by side on a great many matters in the Senate, and I expect we will continue to do so. He is a tireless voice for liberty, and when it comes to standing for liberty, I'm proud to stand with Rand.
And last question, of course, you're here today speaking to the homeschooling community, which these people play a very important role in the Iowa caucus process, helping campaigns out. What's your message to the homeschoolers, and what do you think about homeschooling, the idea of it?
Well, I'm particularly honored to be here today and to be with the homeschool community. Education reform and school choice and homeschooling have been passions of mine for decades. And I think school choice is the civil rights issue of the 21st century. I think every parent has a right to educate his or her children, to provide the home, to teach the values that the parents believe are right for their children. And I salute Iowa for passing historic legislation removing barriers for home educators to educate their kids. I think that's terrific. When I was invited to come here, I was particularly honored to have the chance to encourage and to celebrate the parents and the students, and to celebrate the right of every parent to educate their kids free of the government getting between you and your child.
Senator Cruz, thank you very much.
Thank you. God bless you.